What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Roster Bubble Series video. Please hit that like button, comment, and subscribe. Turn on post notifications so you know when a live stream pops or drops. Appreciate y'all coming back. Also, share this out. This is dead time in the NFL offseason for content creators, and just overall, there's not really any news coming out, so some of the ones who try to be creative, like myself, don't get a lot of views. So if you share this out to, Facebook communities, Twitter communities, Instagram communities, whatever, NFL fans, Giant fans, people in general, they'll see it and they'll click on it, and that will help our channel reach some milestones. So appreciate y'all for coming back and doing all the good stuff like usual. Also, 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts for Twin Bill and Big Blue in the Bronx. So roster bubble video today before we introduce our candidate / profile. The way I run these videos is I take a player that's on the roster bubble, then I go into their background, competition, how they could win a spot on the roster, how they could lose a spot on the roster, and then prediction at the end. So today's candidate / profile is Ricky Seals-Jones, the veteran tight end that the New York Giants signed this offseason, specifically on March 18th. Let's go into his background a little bit. So he was an undrafted free agent out of Texas A&M. The Cardinals signed him in 2017, spent about 2 years with them. Then in 2019, the Browns claimed him off waivers after the Cardinals cut him. Then in 2020, he signed with the Kansas City Chiefs. Then in 2021, he signed another one-year contract with the Washington football team. And then the New York Giants picked him up this past offseason. So with that being said, let's go into a little bit of statistics here. His first year with the Arizona Cardinals, he played in 10 games, started one of them. He had a total of 12 receptions, 201 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He had a very low catch percentage of 42.9, but he had about 16.8 yards per reception, which isn't bad. 2018, the next year, he played in 15 games, started 5 of them, 34 receptions, 343 yards, 1 touchdown, about 10.1 yards per reception, and about 49.3 in terms of catch percentage. 2019 with the Cleveland Browns, played in 14 games, started 3 of them, 14 receptions, 229 yards, and 4 touchdowns, 16.4 yards per reception, so the explosive ability definitely was there in his first 3 years, and he also had a catch percentage, probably the best in his career, of 63.6. Didn't get any receptions with the Kansas City Chiefs in 2020, played in only 2 games, had 1 target, and that was it. And then in 2021, with the Washington football team, he played in 13 games before going on IR, started 6 of them, 30 receptions, 271 yards, 9 yards per reception, 2 touchdowns, and a catch percentage of 61.2. So the deal with this guy, and also fun fact, he did catch a touchdown over Adoree Jackson in Week 2 versus the Washington football team last year. That very, very disheartening game where Darius Slayton dropped the pass. We all know what happened, so I'm not going to explain it again. But the deal with Ricky Seals-Jones, he's a veteran tight end. He's a receiving threat. He's a red zone threat. He isn't a blocking tight end. I think if you watch his film, you talk to other people who cover the teams that he's played for, he is not a blocking tight end. And that's probably why the Giants signed him, because of his red zone threat ability and the fact that he's just generally a receiving threat and an explosive threat. Now, is he a guy like Travis Kelce? Absolutely not. But, for someone to learn off of, I guess, and I know the Giants don't really do this anymore with, bringing in veteran players to coach their younger players, even though Jihad Ward is now doing that for Kayvon Thibodeau. Ricky Seals-Jones could do that in a receiving format for Daniel Bellinger, because Daniel Bellinger was extremely underused at San Diego State, and he's a guy that can be a big playmaker for the New York Giants in the near future. Is he going to be like Kelce? Probably not, but once again, we don't know what's going to happen. As far as his competition goes outside of Daniel Bellinger, who's the only lock, that's why Ricky Seals-Jones in this video is a roster bubble candidate / profile. Chris Myrick, Austin Allen, Jordan Akins, and Andre Miller. Chris Myrick, veteran tight end who's been with the Giants on and off, signed to the practice squad, then signed to the active roster. Then, he went to the Cincinnati Bengals, and he came back. Also, he was with the Miami Dolphins in his rookie year. I think he went to Temple, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, veteran tight end, and not much more than that. Austin Allen, who's an undrafted free agent out of Nebraska, who we will have a video on soon. We talked about him with Nick Filato, of course, a couple of videos ago with the undrafted free agents. Jordan Akins, who is a veteran receiving tight end. Once again, not necessarily a good blocker, but receiving tight end, probably why they signed him. And then Andre Miller, who's making the transition to tight end, and he is coming from an Ivy League school of Maine. Probably played, as Nick Filato said, with a bunch of accountants and future doctors, but he is making transition to tight end, very tall-bodied, and that's pretty much that about him. How can Ricky Seals-Jones get a spot on the roster? Show some skill as a receiving threat in the red zone and all over the field. We know he's not a blocking threat, and to be fair, if he does surprisingly do good with blocking in the preseason, I don't take much stock into that because we all know he's not a very good blocker. But let me explain this before we go further into how can he win, how can he lose. It's going to be interesting to see what this offense looks like. We all know that. But blocking tight end, if they're looking for blocking tight ends, Daniel Bellinger is definitely going to be there, of course. He's going to be there either way. But if they're looking for blocking tight ends, Ricky Seals-Jones may not make the roster. It's going to be a battle between him, Andre Miller, Jordan Akins, and Chris Myrick. And then Austin Allen will probably make the roster. Now, if they're looking for receiving tight ends, and I'll explain my philosophy and thoughts behind this in a minute. If they're looking for receiving tight ends, Ricky Seals-Jones probably will make the roster, along with Jordan Akins, alongside Daniel Bellinger, who is the only lock. Why I say that is because, well, if you're looking for blocking tight ends and at least want to run the ball, a sufficient amount, not too much though, and you want to have a balanced offense, you're probably looking for blocking tight ends. And if you're Brian Dable, and if you want to do what the Buffalo Bills have been doing the last few years, which Dawson Knox is a decent blocking tight end, he's also a very good receiver, of course, that's what we know him as. With that being said, though, he was the only tight end dressed in some games, A. B, they ran the ball probably second least in the league over the last few years. So there's not really, much of a need for a blocking tight end unless you are running the ball heavier than the Buffalo Bills have in the last few seasons. Now, they will utilize Saquon Barkley and some of the running backs as receiving threats. So it's not just going to be the last 2 years where it's they run the ball up the middle with him, and that's pretty much that. So show some skill as a receiving threat in the red zone and all over the field. And how he can lose a spot on the roster, doesn't outperform the fellow vets and the young cats, loses reps with blocking. Once again, I'm not taking any stock into good or bad blocking. We already know who he is. And drops passes with the ones and twos. It was reported that at minicamp, Austin Allen was taking reps with the ones, and so was Daniel Bellinger. So is that a sign we have to see in training camp? Of course. But if he doesn't outperform his fellow vets and young cats, there's no spot for him. He probably has one of the best chances to make this roster, knowing that he's been a vet for several years now, and we know what he is. But if he drops passes and just doesn't succeed at what he's good at in the preseason and training camp, it's going to be trouble for him. It's going to be trouble for him, and guys like Jordan Akins and Austin Allen will pass him up on the depth chart, and Seals-Jones really won't be able to do anything about it. So with that being said, with the positive and negative talk, I think Ricky Seals-Jones will make the roster. I think they're going to elect to go, obviously, a lot of passing, using the running backs out wide, using the tight ends out wide, doing whatever, so on and so forth. I think they'll stick to, obviously, mostly a passing offense, which will not incorporate blocking tight ends as much. So Bellinger, obviously, is a lock, Ricky Seals-Jones, and then we'll reveal another tight end, of course, in future videos, who will make one of those roster spots. And this isn't even it in terms of predictions and stuff like that. At the end of training camp, at the end of the preseason, before cuts are made, I will come out with a video basically doing a 53-man roster prediction for an initial 53-man roster. Now, obviously, I say initial because waiver wire and trades can happen after you set the initial 53. But if you haven't already, like, comment, and subscribe, turn on post notifications so you know when the live stream pops or drops. Appreciate y'all coming back. Peace out, guys. See you later, and stay cool.